life. My job. My curse is to vanquish evil.
His name is Van Helsing.
Some say you're a holy man. Others say you're a murderer. Which is it?
It's a bit of both.
He has come to a forbidden land to battle enemies that are legend.
Oh my God.
This summer, evil has one name to fear. Hugh Jackman is Van Helsing.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
It was a defensive exercise.
Yeah, best defense is a good offense. Or is it the other way around?
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to another Secret Defenders, where I task my guests to defend their favourite movies that are underrated, infamous, or obscure. And today we are going back to another dark universe after Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and we'll be talking all sorts of gothic, weird and wacky characters, campy performances, and oh so much more. Sarah Coyne is back after her Candyman podcast, the most successful podcast of last year, and we're back to talk not about X-Men this time. We did do a Comics in Motion one. We recorded twice because, again, the technology of Victor Frankenstein was not working that day. But we're back, and more than ever, I am here for, and as always, to hear the passionate defense of any and all of these films. And Sarah, tell us why you love 2004's Van Helsing so much.
Well, yeah, if you're here for passionate defenses, yes. So, yeah, I love this film, and it's one of those ones where, and I think a lot of people love it too. I think it's kind of been reevaluated, as a lot of films have, like that kind of time in the sort of early 2000s where nobody wanted to have any fun. I think a lot of those films have been reevaluated. But I feel like this film is always prefaced with, it's terrible, it's a piece of shit, but I love it. And I'm like, I just can't bring myself to even say like this is a bad film. Like I understand the thought process behind it, but I just enjoy it so much. And I think it's that classic example of, I think you have to meet some films or pieces of art where they're at. Like, no, this film is not high art, but it's not trying to be. I think I almost kind of put it in the same category as fan fiction. Because, like, I don't know, it's kind of very, we have League of Extraordinary Gentlemen at home.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, in the way of, we're just going to combine all of these different properties and everything and make a story out of it. And I think that allows it to be very creative and just very fun. And I think for me, I get it, because I also did my kind of early 2000s edgelord stuff of like, it's not serious enough. Whereas now I'm like, fuck yeah, I just want to be entertained more than anything else. And the absolute worst thing a film can be for me is boring. And this film is
Yes, I agree. I say this all the time. I've seen, high art, I've seen low art, I've seen dog shit, and I'll talk about how I often plumb the depths of some films where others wouldn't. It gives me a perspective when people are like, oh, this is one of the worst films I've ever seen. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? I could give you genuine films that are awful, terribly put together, and boring on top of that, while still being a little bit interesting. But no, I absolutely with you. I think middle-of-the-road films or dull films and ones that do not make bold choices are my least favourite out of any films ever made.
Absolutely, especially because I feel like that's kind of the glut we're in with cinema at the minute. I think film studios are more so than ever, I feel like, just terrified of making big swings. So we're just getting this kind of onslaught of films where, like you said, like they're not really good, they're not bad either, but they're just Like the amount of films where I forget that I've seen them, because they just happen and they pass 2 hours and it's fine. But yeah, and I just, me personally, I feel like that is much more worrying in terms of the kind of culture of filmmaking at the minute. The fact that films are just more boring than anything else. Like I would genuinely rather watch something that's terrible or badly made or rough around the edges and stuff, but at least there's something to it, there's something to talk about with it, or it's divisive, than just it's fine. And this film, I think, is a little divisive. I think when it came out, it obviously got quite badly panned, and I am glad that people have kind of started to kind of develop a bit of a sense of humor about these things again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you are correct. We're just about, so with 2004, we are just about to get like Batman Begins, which is, though it did have some humor to it, it is the dark, the grim and gritty, and again, it is that era where it is like that's the only superhero movie you can do. You can only do the Blades and the Batmans. You can't do anything else. We've had Batman and Robin, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to do campy anymore. We can't do it, even though, again, it's a wonderful film in its own right, and again, I sung the praises of Joel Schumacher recently, and again, it is what it is, and you can find enjoyment in that and fun in that. But yeah, there is this, and again, I got sick of it as well. Like we have Daredevil the year before this, which again, very kind of campy in its own way, but still very dark and grim and serious.
It's much worse than Van Helsing, put it that way.
and I like Daredevil, the theatrical and the director's cut. The director's cut is superior, but yes,
I've not actually watched the director's cut.
Oh, it's good. It's got Coolio in it. It kind of fills in a lot of the holes, and you don't get that shit love scene as well. It's a win for me. And it's a little bit more violent and brutal, and yeah, it works a bit better. Not perfect, doesn't fix it entirely, but it works for me. But again, that's a whole podcast for another time. But yeah, I get what you mean. I think even now, I think we don't have like the sense of fun, or like, there is something about film studios now where we're kind of almost like, if you look at Sony and the Spider-Man films, which I've talked en masse about, like they've kind of gone back to doing the early 2000s type of superhero movie, and some people like that, some people don't, whatever your kind of preference is. But yeah, there is just this kind of like, this is the way these things are done. This is the way these genres are done. And I honestly, I know, Universal Studios have been trying desperately to bring these monster characters together. We just had the Wolfman come out, which has been, again, divisive as well. I've not seen it yet, but I did like The Invisible Man that they did, Lee Winnell did. But yeah, I've heard kind of mixed things about that one. But again, that was optioned by Universal so they could kind of, again, capitalize on this previous existing Universal kind of idea of the monster mash, let's say. But I don't think bringing characters like this together in a traditional horror sense, making it a true horror film, would work. Like I think you do have to have a kind of a somewhat of a camp, silly sensibility for these characters to interact and work. And I think this is probably the best attempt that Universal has made to building, what they want, a dark universe. I looking at the other examples, Dracula Untold, The Mummy with Tom Cruise, not the Stephen Sommers one. Yeah, there's all these kind of like, they're desperate to do it for so many years. Like, I like Monster Squad. It's not perfect and has some kind of problematic elements, but I appreciate it as a kind of a kids' 80s movies, which again has its scary moments and horrific moments, but it still has that camp and sense of fun because even the superhero movies, you've got a raccoon and a tree, teaming up with a super soldier and a blue person, and Wakandans and what have you. I think you still have to have a sense of camp. Maybe not go all the way into it or dive, plumb the depths of the camp. But I think you've got to have a little playfulness with stuff like this.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're dealing with things that are otherworldly. Like it makes me think of when I was reading about Robert Eggers making Nosferatu. And I liked that film. I don't think I would argue, I don't think it went far enough into the kind of camp or just batshit stuff you could lean into with that. Certainly not like as far as like the Herzog version did. But like, just you read him in interviews and he's saying like, I really wanted to kind of nail the sort of historical accuracy of it all. And I'm a bit like, Robert, they're vampires. I don't know. I understand. I kind of see where he's coming from, but I think it's still this kind of like we feel slightly shackled to. Well, we have to take it seriously, and we have to be serious because if people are laughing, then that's a bad thing. Or
I kind of get what he's after. Again, I feel the same. I liked it. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it was. I wanted him to kind of because. I think the idea with that was like, no, Orlok is his own character. This is its own story. It's not Dracula. It's this. It's that. It's a completely original take. And I was like, okay, great. We're going to see a completely original take. And then I was like, beat for beat, this is still Dracula. Like, there's no like, you've kind of the Rose Depp role has been expanded upon, and it's more intriguing and interesting, and various other things. But you still have a Van Helsing and Willem Dafoe. You still have, you've still got the various kind of tropes and set pieces and ideas there. And again, I think the cinematography, the atmosphere, the vibe is all his films are all about.
Yeah, it's shot immaculately.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous. It's an absolutely gorgeous film, and I kind of was like, I thought you were going to take more liberties with it. I really thought it was going to be. I think the look of the character is great, but I was hoping for a bit more like liberties to be taken because I'm like, right, if this is them going, it's not Dracula, he's his own character. Let's make him his own character. Let's make him and make this story different, And again, it's the same idea, the same take, but vastly different versions each time from each other, which is good. But I also was like, if you're not making it Dracula, because the Herzog one said it's Dracula, then either make it Dracula and then stick to the Dracula tropes. And again, I was like, I've seen this a million times. I have seen this literally a million times. And again, done in a variety of ways. And again, it's done very well. Don't get me wrong. You've got the Renfield character in there as well. Great stuff. But I was like, if you're going to say Orlok is this wholly original thing, then go with it, run with it, And again, I think that I kind of agree with you. I think there should have been maybe a little more playfulness, a bit more humor. I like that they kind of delve into the monster fucker aspect of it as well. Like they're like, oh yeah, you think vampires are sexy? Here's this guy with rotting corpse and a big dick that's about to fall off. So I quite like that aspect. And again, I think there is this kind of, I think he was trying to get away from the romanticized version of the vampire, the reincarnated love of Bram Stoker's, or the Twilight version where they're like, oh, I don't like myself. Oh, but I love you. Oh, all
the
of
dark
this.
gift, I can't share it with you. But
This is the skin of a killer, Bella. All this. I get that he's trying to get away from that, and again, he's trying to root in the folklore. But yeah, I'm with you. Like it, don't love it, but it's fine. But we're not here to talk about Nosferatu. We'll save that for another podcast.
Yes.
But again, how did you find this film? And then at the time, were you still in that kind of like, oh, I can't take this seriously. This isn't cool. This isn't edgy. This isn't Underworld. Which is, I know you're a fan of anyway.
Specifically Underworld 3, Rise of the Lycans is, in my opinion, the best of the whole franchise. But that's a Michael Sheen
again.
thing.
That's another podcast we can do.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, so coming into this, because when I went to see it, my dad asked me, he was like, "What did you think of that?" And I said, 10 out of 10, Dad. It was amazing. When I came out of the cinema, I don't think he agreed with me, but I was like, "This is brilliant. It was the best film I've ever seen. Superb." So how did you come into it? How did you feel coming out of your first experience?
Do you know, I can't remember if I saw this in cinemas or not. I probably watched it on DVD, I imagine. And I have always loved this film. I think even in the midst of my kind of, so what age would I would have been about 12 when this came out. So, kind of on the cusp of my sort of Green Day, everything sucks kind of phase of my life. But I think I just always loved this film.
I am still in that phase.
Yeah, same. I think if anything, I've completely reverted to my, government's a bad fuck fuck everything.
What 180 right back to where
Yeah.
it was.
But yeah, I just always loved it. I mean, I always loved anything even vaguely kind of vampire werewolfy adjacent. And I knew Hugh Jackman primarily as playing Wolverine from this, so I imagine that was probably how I got involved with it, just kind of in the Hugh Jackman X-Men to vampire pipeline stuff. But yeah, I just always loved it. I don't know if I appreciated the campiness of it at the time, in the sense that, like, I don't think I was watching it going, this is campus tits, I love it. I think I just kind of took it at face value, but still really enjoyed it. And there's definitely elements of it that I just always thought were cool. Like, I mean, we'll get into it, but like things like, the werewolf transformations look incredible. But I think also it's very, I mean, obviously it's by the same, Stephen Sommers also directed The Mummy, which is another one that's kind of universally loved now. And I genuinely don't think there's much different in this one versus The Mummy. It's just for some reason people seem to kind of rate The Mummy much more in terms of it being a better made film.
I did get sick of The Mummy Returns because that was always on like ITV2 like every day.
That's so true, actually, yeah.
It was on ITV2 every day, every week for like 5 or 6 years. I swear to God, every time I turned on ITV2, they were showing The Mummy Returns. I don't know if that was the only film they had, it's the only film they could afford, but it was just always on. So I was kind of a bit sick to death. But yeah,
have
it's
you
fun.
considered Rachel Weisz?
Fair point. I mean, I will say, I'll give Stephen Sommers credit. He knows how to cast beautiful people and shoot them in very beautiful ways.
He is he's a bisexuals director, is what I would describe him as. I think, between this and The Mummies, and even the live action Jungle Book that he did, the real live action Jungle Book, in my opinion.
Shit, yeah, he did do that.
Like, I think he's welcome in the bisexual cinema collection.
The bisexual film festival of Stephen Sommers. Yeah, Deep Rising is good as well. Have you seen that?
Oh no, I haven't actually.
That's on Disney Plus. It's basically, it was a sequel. It was a secret prequel to another Universal property, but I won't spoil that for you because it kind of gives away the ending. But yeah, it's kind of aliens but on a boat with sea monsters kind of thing. It's great.
Interesting.
Yeah, really, really fun. Give that a go. So yeah, he does know how to cast, and again, all the people in this film are stunning. Well, maybe, I mean, the main characters anyway are very good-looking people, and then it kind of veers into like weird monks and friars, and and David Wenham, who plays Carl, is not a bad-looking guy, but they're trying to make him look like an unconventionally attractive friar, let's say. But yeah, so yeah, it's a wild film, and I think I do have some issues with it. I'll be honest, it's not perfect, but I did have a lot of fun with it. I think if you're here for it, like if you are, open to the campiness and the wildness and the fun and the silliness, I think you can get a lot out of this. I think I love the opening with the black and white, black and white filter on, and again they blend the kind of. I think they blend of all the things they blend together. I think they blend the Frankenstein and Dracula stuff best. I think everything else is kind of a little, like, the werewolf stuff feels a little tacked on a little bit.
I do agree with that. I think it's probably just for some reason vampires and werewolves are always kind of pitted as like hereditary enemies. But yeah, it does actually, the way they kind of twist Dracula into the Frankenstein element of it, does work quite well.
Yeah, I like the idea that, again, because Dracula's gone against God, and again, Frankenstein is going against God, and, he can create life and bring life to Dracula's kind of unborn. There's definitely a bit of Gary Oldman's Dracula in this, like him being, there's some element there of kind of that kind of loneliness and loss, and him being hollow, and all that. And Richard Roxburgh, who plays him, is having. I love when I see actors just having an absolute fucking ball.
Yeah, those are always maybe not the best performances in terms of technique, but just for me to watch. Like, I just love to watch actors having the time of their lives, and Richard Roxburgh is chewing all of the scenery, just having a whale of a time. I know. He's such a good actor for like chewing the scenery as well. Like he's great as the Duke in Moulin Rouge, like a genuinely excellent, like dandy
Yes.
villain who is also genuinely quite threatening. More so in Moulin Rouge, I kind of feel like he doesn't quite have the sort of gravitas, sort of danger of Dracula in this. But part of
No.
that for me is that, like, I find it really difficult to root for the heroes in this film.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Watching it this time, I was just a bit like, this is the story of Dracula and his polycule, and they just want to start a family in the community that
Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
just leave him alone. Like,
Leave him
this is
fucking
why
alone.
missionary work is bad.
Well, I was going to say this because at the beginning, like so you have the classic, it's alive, Frankenstein's monsters brought to life. You got the lightning, blah blah blah, and you find out that Count Dracula has commissioned and given Frankenstein this castle in order to conduct his experiments, so he can bring life to the progeny, his offspring, as they're described later in the film. And then we get the classic angry mob with the pitchforks and the flame, which is great. But again, like the Valeriuses or the Valerius family are not seen to be there, which was strange. But I guess they want to be introduced in a more heroic way later in the film. And that shot where Kate Beckinsale brandishes that sword is epic. She's doing the spin. She's got the locks in her face, big silver sword. Awesome. Just a great
God
way
love
to
her.
introduce her.
Anna is useless as a character, but I have to appreciate any character that enters the frame arse first.
Yes. Well, yeah, I guess so. I guess there's that bisexual eye is
Yeah.
a bisexual camera is on her. But I will say this about her, like, again, she's a stunning woman anyway. She's a great actress, and even Stephen Sommers was like, I've got to have her. I've got to have this actress in this film. I really think she'll be a great fit. And they weren't sure, the studio weren't sure, he wasn't sure, because she's done Underworld so recently, which I think was the year before, came out the year before, I think, or a couple of years before. They were a bit like, I don't know if she'll do another vampire thing. But no, she was well up for it and kind of jumped on board. And what I do appreciate about it is, again, I think a lot of films, maybe in this area or a bit earlier, would, because she's such a beautiful woman, they're going like, well, she's got to look beautiful all of the time, and she's got to look, she's got to be this, or it's either that she's got to look beautiful all of the time, or she's got to be really skilled, so she never gets hurt, she's never injured, but she gets fucked up every 5 minutes. And again, she's got dirt and blood down her face, her hair's a mess. And I appreciated that, because I'm a big believer in kind of characters going through the ringer. So when they get to the final victory, it feels earned. Like, again, like Indiana Jones is the classic example, that truck scene where any scene in Indiana Jones, he gets fucked up, So I'm glad that it's nice to see a female character get absolutely just battered. And like, she's even hurting herself doing that crazy backflip from the roof onto the tree upside down, and I was like, okay, you're wild for that, but okay. But I did appreciate that, because when they do succeed and when they do kill a vampire, where they do kill the werewolf, I'm like, oh, fantastic! They overcame the odds.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think that's what adds the danger element, and I actually think the brides are the bigger foil in a way. Like, they're kind of the ones who really bring that sense of danger, and like you said, like, they fuck shit up. Like both Van Helsing and Anna and kind of anyone in their path just get absolutely thrown around and totaled. And like you said, I think that's what creates this idea of these vampires are powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, every animal, and every object gets absolutely yeeted in this film, and I love every second that happens. You get the cow yeeted, Van Helsing, Anna, the fucking the big kind of mechanical stuff that they're throwing around. That the monster kit.
Also bless Stephen Sommers for showing us that the cow was okay at the end.
Oh, I love that.
Because you do see the cow, like you said, get absolutely yeeted. You're like, oh no! And then at the end, just like, I'm good. I'm just on the roof.
One thing I didn't quite believe, it was like, oh, they only drink blood or kill people 1 or 2 people a month. Bull fucking shit. Bullshit. They've got this tiny village. I was like, they would have extinguished you in 500 years or however long it's been. There's no way people in Transylvania shagging that much to facilitate that 1 or 2 people a month, only 1 or 2 people a month are drained of their blood. there's some very weird rules that they make up in this, sort of changes they make. Well, I'll talk about it later, but we'll get into the werewolf full moon bollocks later because that doesn't make any fucking sense at all. But yeah, like in terms of like the interpretations of these very classic, very famous kind of creatures. Again, this is Universal, so they can do the classic flathead Frankenstein and the bolts and stuff. Given these interpretations, how do you feel about them in kind of opposed to other classic interpretations of these characters?
I mean, like I said, I think the liberties that they do take are really interesting and quite creative for the most part. Like I think for me, in terms of, you know, if we start with the werewolf, like you're never going to top an American Werewolf in London in terms of transformation for me. Like that is just untouchable, and I feel like most werewolf transformations, like whether they're paying homage to it or they just kind of feel that that's the way that makes the most sense, they're always kind of like slightly poorer versions of that, even if they're done very well. And I really like the fact that this film went, no, the idea that actually it kind of comes from within, and the fact that they're like ripping the skin off. So it's like, and it's not gory, but there is this kind of really visceral sort of extremity to it. And yeah, I love it every time I see it. And I remember when I was younger, especially really liking it because it was the first time I'd seen anything like that. And I think that holds up really well. I also like the thing with the Frankenstein with Adam, in the way that I don't think I'd ever really seen a version of him where so he's obviously, it's implied in the novel that he's stitched together, whereas in this it's almost kind of more like mechanical pieces that have been attached. And so there's times where, you know, he gets hit and like the whole thing kind of like falls apart, and you can kind of see like like you can kind of see like the mechanics of it all, and like the hinges and everything. And I think that all that, great, love it. Yeah, just really interesting designs. I think the vampires are probably the weakest. I think the brides look great in any form. You know, their kind of alluring sort of vixeny forms obviously look great, but then their actual monster forms look cool. I think Dracula's kind of final boss monster form is where they really dropped the ball, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a little, yeah. I think it's one of those problems where you have these arch villains, and then at the end they just become a CGI mess. Speaking of The Mummy Returns,
God.
That's exactly what happens in that one, isn't it? So yeah, and I don't think we were there at the point with the technology where the CGI was that good. And again, it was just like, it just seems like a big leech. It's almost like you got a big leech face, just with like teeth or something. I do like when he transforms that his wings fold in, that become his kind of cloak, or his tunic, or whatever you want to call it. I thought that was a good. I do think the CGI goes from like amazing to dog shit. Like shot from shot. I think the werewolves probably look the worst, I think, just because I don't think we've got to a point where we can like accurately kind of depict fur and it not be like super shiny. I think you said in our messages, I think you said that the ears are a little bit too pointy. You know, they're a bit too kind of stylized, I think.
Yeah, there's just something about it for me that, and I think it's just the aesthetics of them being that pointy. I don't know. I think I kind of...
Yeah, it kind of almost, they kind of don't look like ears. They just kind of look more like horns or something.
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna talk about the werewolf thing.
Yeah, we might as well.
It really fucking bothered me. So we've got a grey werewolf who bites Valerius' brother, I think. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Velkin.
Velkin, that's it. Velkin. So we have a grey one, which was inspired by American Werewolf, apparently, by that original design or something like that. And then he becomes the werewolf, and the werewolves are under Dracula's control. And they say that it's unstable. Their transformation is unstable until they reach their first full moon, basically. So they keep kind of transforming, and they tear the skin off, and then to become, and again, wonderful effect, wonderful idea, wonderful kind of aesthetic, and then when they're turning back, they tear the fur off, and then they become human again. So throughout the film, spoilers for the film, Van Helsing eventually kills. So they kill the grey werewolf. Vulcan kills him with a silver bullet, and then he becomes Dracula's new pet. And then Vulcan then bites Van Helsing and is killed in another action sequence. And then now Van Helsing has the curse, and now he only has 2 days before his first full moon to stop from becoming a full werewolf and never going back. How the fuck does that work if because they talk about Vulcan going, oh, he's not fully a werewolf yet. It's not fully lost. There's a cure. Anna's aware of a cure potentially in Dracula's castle. They're not 100% sure about it, but she wants to give herself that kind of hope. And then Van Helsing gets it, but then there's another 2 days before his first full moon. This is the problem I have with werewolves. Like, if you're gonna do the werewolves, you're gonna have them change and do this and fine. It's the issue I had with the Werewolf by Night comic, because they'd they get up to a point and then they'd be like, oh, now a month later we're gonna have to pick up the story again. What's happened in that intervening month? Like, I think that's the main issue I have with this working, because every time they talk about it, I'm like, this is absolutely doesn't make a lick of sense at all. I don't know if this was an issue for you, or you could kind of, again, just kind of shut your brain off to it, but it was
honestly,
an issue for me.
it's actually somehow never bothered me. I've never really thought about it. But yeah, maybe if it was any other film, it might have bothered me. I think this film is just so like, just along for the silly ride of it all.
And again, that's fine. Like, if you wanted to throw out the full moon thing, I'm fine. Like, I think most of the kind of lore for a werewolf, because there's not. Because, like, if you remember back in the original Dracula novel and in Bram Stoker's, he turns into a werewolf. Like, he turns into a wolf. Like, I don't think we really had folklore about werewolves, really, until, like, kind of Universal said, oh, we can make, this, we could maybe make this into something else, or we can, rework maybe the Skinwalker myth, or kind of like changeling, kind of shapeshifter characters we could maybe make into something. And I think that's where most of the lore comes from, the Wolfsbane, the Silver. It does come mostly directly from that film, I believe. Again, I could be wrong, but I believe a lot of those kind of staples, the full moon, things like that, I believe come more so from that film than anywhere else, which is great. And it kind of, it created its own thing, and the werewolf kind of film and myth is kind of part of cinema. It's a classic part of cinema now. But if you wanted to just, bin off the full moon thing, I'd be happy with that. I'd be like, right, we're not doing those rules. Every time we do a vampire film, there's a new set of rules of things that do and do not work. The same in this one. With Dracula, you can't be killed by. There's only one thing you can be killed by, and it's not the standard stuff. And so I would have been happy with that, but and that's what I thought was happening until they bring it up, and then that's the problem.
Yeah, and I feel like they go almost a step further with it as well. And they actually do the same thing with the vampires, where they kind of make it a thing where it's direct moonlight and direct sunlight that hurts them, because in both instances we see a cloud cover that, briefly lets Vulcan change back into a human. And then the vampires have to hide from hide once the sun kind of comes out from behind the clouds. So actually, the idea that they not only kind of didn't create their own lore, well, they kind of they expand on lore that's already there, but maybe not in a way that if you do sit and think about it.
I think the problem is, if they hadn't mentioned it, it wouldn't have been an issue. But then they mention it, so then I'm like, well, you just trip yourself up. You could have just like not brought it up, because again, like, they were in daylight, and I didn't have an issue with them being in daylight, because it was grey or dusk, and again, like in the original book, Dracula walks around in the sun.
Yeah, he can move about in day.
It's not a thing. It was only like the original Nosferatu, I think, which introduced the sunrise aspect and the sun burning them or what have you. But I could have dealt with it, but then they bring it up, and now you're like, well, you've just created your own problem. Now there's a problem with this. And again, like, the sun doesn't really come into effect again later on anyway. They never really have a moment where they're like, oh no, the sun's coming up. They don't have that. So yeah, that was just my big thing that I kind of, again, I'm nitpicking really, but there was one thing I was like, because they spend like several days. It's not like over one night or a couple of nights. It's like maybe even the space of a week or 4 or 5 days. And again, they travel as well. They go to Budapest and then back, so, it's a little, they put this ticking clock on it. And again, by doing that, they create their own problem. And I think it does work to a degree. It does help with the narrative and the finale, but again, because we've had so many werewolf appearances, and then again they make it clear about Vulcan, and again, and they're like, and again, I don't think the full moon has happened, but she goes, yeah, can't save Vulcan, and I was like, okay, well, I thought you said that we were waiting for the full moon. Oh yeah, he can't be safe now. We've got to kill him. Oh, okay, right, sure. If you want to kill your brother, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, it was just one. It was the one thing that really kind of irked me when I was kind of watching it. I was just like, if you hadn't have said anything, this would have been fine.
Yes, I
This
think
would
you've
have been
opened a
fine.
can of worms for me now, because now I'm kind of thinking back and thinking, yeah,
I'm
actually, at the time,
sorry.
like,
I'm
what is this?
sorry.
No, it's fine. It was bound to happen sooner or later.
I've ruined the movie for you. I've ruined it for
God damn
everybody.
it, no! What am I going to secretly defend now? Right, Underworld 3, Rise of the Lycans.
There we go. No, but yeah, no, I just yeah, that was just the one. Again, there's other issues, but I think that was my main one where I was like, you didn't say anything. You could have gotten away with it, but you had to say something about it. You had to reference something. And now, if you think about it too much, you can, pull it apart. But yeah, that was just my issue. But yeah, I don't know if there's any kind of moments for you which really stand out or really kind of. Again, I know you like it, I like it, but are there any moments for you that you're like?
I mean,
kind
of on the back of what you're saying from my most recent rewatch, in the way that, like, if they hadn't mentioned anything, it wouldn't have been a problem. But there is definitely an element of this film where you can tell that there was a producer or someone behind the screenwriter saying, no, we need to just really hammer it home and make sure the audience understands. So, like, the first time that the vampires disappear when the sun comes out, most people watching it will be like somewhat familiar with the concept of vampires and the fact that they, in most things, can't go out in the sun, but the fact that they still have Anna go, the sun. Yes, thank you, we got that. Or at the very end when again, spoilers, when Anna dies at the end, and you just have David Wenham very sadly and endearingly go, she's dead. Like, yes, thank you, we got that.
That was the one. That was the one point where I was like, no, they're trying to make her look as beautiful as possible at this one point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you should like have a bit of blood on her, or just have her like look like
just something where she's more visibly, because maybe that was it. Because she does just kind of look like she might just have disassociated,
been asleep.
Yeah,
because it's not like, and again, it's not like he's like, because he's this huge, overbearing, superhuman, super powerful wolf. She should have at least gone through that little fucking chaise lounge that she lies on.
Yeah, like that would have been interesting actually if they'd had it where, like, it's almost like, how to say this phrasing, like if he'd kind of like pummeled her through the wall almost, and then you could have like a thing where he's transformed, and then you just have like almost like the Snow White hand or something.
Yeah,
like something that I mean, to be fair, I do not care for that ending, especially now. Like I never really liked it at the time, I think, because there was a point in time where you were just like, but the love interest dies, you can't do that, but that's when you haven't watched that many films when you're 12.
I will say I'm glad it wasn't a kind of I mean, she does die, but it's so she can be with her family and the curse can be lifted. So I get that. So I think if she was to die, it's probably the best place for it, because I think if she dies before that, you could argue it's like a fridging and it's like to motivate Van Helsing. So
it's just a shame
I feel like
that's 2 for 2 that Hugh Jackman's played a character where he kind of like has to kill his love interest for the greater good.
Yeah,
it's not it's not as gross as it is in X-Men 3.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of gross things in X-Men 3, but I still kind of like that one, and again, I know it's not great, but there's still something I kind of like. And again, I think the reason he was cast is because he's really good at playing an amnesiac.
Honestly, yeah. There's so many Wolverine beats that he hits in this film. I would also argue that this role is Hugh Jackman's Aragorn. Like, he has never looked fitter.
Oh, absolutely. He's a sexy man.
Yeah, he's a very, very attractive man, and especially in this, like that kind of rough around the edges, sort of like just his entrance is so cool, just with that kind of half mask, and so you haven't even seen his full face yet, but he's just got the mask and the hat. And you're just like, yes, I'm on board for this. Especially like Silvestri went hard with this soundtrack. It's so good.
It's a banger. It's an absolute banger. I love
a banger. The theme, like the chase music when they're in the carriage is all great.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I love a bit of Alan Silvestri. I feel like he's a bit of a unsung composer.
No, I agree with you. I was just thinking, did he do the Daredevil? Did he do the Daredevil score? And I was like, no, that was Graham Revell, I think. But yes, and that makes sense now that it wasn't Alan Silvestri on that score. But yeah, I think I think the like the opening, the Jekyll and Hyde thing was interesting. It got a bit of Scottish representation with
Finally,
Hagrid
thank you. Yes,
Finally,
it's only the Romanians who have to suffer this time.
hey,
Awesome.
hey, I'll be honest. You know, I'm like probably like an eighth Italian. So when the father comes in, is like, hey, I'm Italian. Hey, hello. Yeah, the Vatican will always protect. We are the Knights of the Holy Order. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, here we go.
To be fair, I do often think, and I'm sorry to any Italian speakers, Italian listeners, but I do often think that you listen to people doing Italian accents in films and you're like, oh, come on, they don't sound that cartoonish. But then often you meet an actual Italian and you're like, okay, maybe
some of the stereotypes are true. Some of the stereotypes are true. Okay.
But yeah, Robbie Coltrane at his most Robbie Coltrane as Hyde, which is great. Also, fun fact, the actor that played Frankenstein's monster did the mocap for Hyde.
Yes. Yeah, he did, which makes sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I even I don't know if you managed to watch it, but I watched the animated prequel to this film, and the London Assignment. I don't know what it was about Universal, but they did this with Riddick as well. They made like a very short, half an hour kind of animated prequel to Chronicles of Riddick, and they did the same with this. It immediately like breaks the continuity of the film, but it's interesting if you want to see like demonic beefeaters and Queen Victoria. That little animated thing is for you. Again, Van Helsing and is in it, and the Friar is in it, Carl's in it, and they're both voiced by the same actors as well. So
nice.
So David
I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I add it to the ever-expanding list.
It's fine. It's fun. But yeah, I thought this was a nice kind of opening, and again, this kind of reference to the Hunchback as well, which not technically a universal monster, but neither is Mr. Hyde really technically. Within that group, the Phantom of the Opera is, and we do get a scene later on, which I imagine you loved at the Masquerade Ball, which is very Phantom of the Opera.
You know me very well. Yes, I absolutely know that scene. I think it goes. I will say
this. I will say this as well. We learn later that Dracula, again spoilers, is related to the Valeriuses. So he's from the same bloodline. But he's quite happy kissing on and stroking Kate Beckinsale's cleavage and trying to seduce her and stuff. And I'm like, I mean, I guess he is technically the son of the devil. So he's not a nice guy. But I was kind of thinking,
I've been on a real Anne Rice kick recently. I am horrendously late to the party. Like the series is fantastic. Watch it. But the books, there's a lot of weird, like, kind of pseudo, oh god, what's the word?
Incesty?
Kind of pseudo incesty stuff. So I mean, maybe I'm just kind of now like, it's just par for the course.
You're numb to it. You're like, give me all the incest porn I can get. Come on, bring it on.
Vampire Stepbrothers, sure.
What are you doing, Vampire Stepbro?
Why are you in that washing machine, Hen? God, I'm sorry. Right, moving on.
You did mention like some of the kind of I think you were mentioning kind of the exposition stuff and the lore and stuff. I thought there was some awful exposition dumping. You know, when they go into the castle and they find the offspring, and then immediately Jackman's like, oh, this must be vampire offspring, and he must be wanting to bring them to life. And I was like, how the fuck did you make that assessment?
I know.
You just these giant, disgusting sacks. And you just go, oh yeah, vampire offspring, and they were like, oh, they give birth to thousands of these. There's thousands of them. I was like, I don't know what the birthing process is for vampires, but
you took the words out of my mouth because yes, I feel like I need to understand what happens here.
What are the mechanics of this?
Because they're still fairly humanoid, even in their kind of monster form, and I just need to know: do they lay eggs? Does Dracula lay? What?
Do they come out small and grow as they develop, like, you know, outside the womb kind of thing? Or...
I have many questions regarding that.
I do kind of gross. Me just thinking about it is just kind of
the grossness of it, like when he's kind of digging through the sack, and it's just the kind of just constant gloop and everything. I do like the fact that the film kind of leaned into that kind of like splatter sort of side of
you
things.
got to have a bit of grossness. Yeah, you got to have a little bit of like,
Yeah.
I do think the vampire babies look pretty good. The CGI
Yeah.
on the vampire babies was pretty good. Nice, because they're coming out of the sack, so they're covered in like mucus. So, and I think that's the thing with CG. A lot of it can just be really shiny. Like the werewolf, like coats are probably just a bit too shiny for me. But I think they work because they're supposed to be covered in like wet shit, while they're flying around and stuff.
It's very Addams Family as well, in the way that, like, the brides just clearly absolutely dote on their hideous abomination offspring.
I love all the screaming in this as well, like all of Dracula just yelling, and then the bride's like, if you're not in for the camp before the brides arrive, the brides are there like full camp, like full on Romanian accents, like you would like to fly, all that sort of stuff. Absolutely, like that's when you're in for a really campy, vampy
they're
ride.
kind of the litmus test. I mean, one thing I do weirdly quite appreciate about this film is the way that the particularly Alira, the kind of main bride, and Anna clearly have a kind of previous history going on, like the fact that they speak to each other, they know each other. The fact that she, even while Alira is trying to kill her, she's saying, no, I will weep over your dead body, and there's just something about the idea of these female characters that all know each other, and even the brides in their own way, they don't even you get the impression in the beginning they kind of want to bring Anna into it, and I don't know, there's just something about this kind of, it's not just, oh, you're another pretty woman, you're not one of us, so you have to die. I don't know, there's just something, the kind of twisted sort of community of it all, I really enjoy.
Yeah, I never really thought about it, but yeah, they imply like she's like the latest bride, or within Anna's lifetime, this like almost like a school friend or something, and that they do know each other, or they've had various interactions. Also, the fact that no one's killed a vampire in 100 years, it's pretty pathetic, really. Like this Transylvanian town, absolutely useless. Valerius is clearly quite useless as well. Bizarre that nobody, again, they don't know how to kill Dracula, which is fine, because he's the guy, he's the Lord of Vampires, Lord of the Undead. I get that, it's not quite, the rules are slightly different for him. But again, the rules for the brides are not, they could, this seemingly could do it. I think,
because it would make sense if Dracula is kind of an ancient one, is harder to kill, but then any of his kind of fledglings could be easier to. Like, I agree with you. Like, I think he's the first in 100 years. I think is obviously just meant to make Van Helsing seem like a much bigger deal. Just again on the kind of twisted community of it all thing, I like the fact that the vampires actually mourn for each other as well. I know Dracula's a bit quick in there with the "I'll find another bride." But there is, he does have his subtle as a sledgehammer kind of screaming for her when he realizes she's gone.
He doesn't have a heart though, Sarah. He doesn't have a heart. You've got to remember, he doesn't have a
joy,
heart.
no sorrow.
No sorrow.
Loves a dance though.
He does. Like he loves a ball. I really enjoyed the wire work as well that they use when he's just all of a sudden just walking up a wall for no reason and just like
that felt like a really nice nod to the kind of crawling along the wall from the original novel. And there's something kind of almost more horrifying about the fact that he's just walking and then suddenly he's just like 90 degrees like dancing on the ceiling. There's lots of really fun little details and effects in this film that I think you just wouldn't really get now. And no, it's not really in service of anything, but I think, it's like somebody just went, oh, why don't we have him crawl along the wall? Oh, no, I'll do you one better.
I do think if this film came out today, it would be probably more harshly critiqued, I think, than even it was back in the day. I think people would be like, what is this shit? This is fucking stupid. Dracula would never do that. It's nothing like the novel. Oh my God, there's a woman in it. Fucking hell. Just all that. You get all that fucking bullshit. And again, it didn't make much money. There were talks of them doing like a series because they were to reuse the set in Romania because it's cheap to film in Romania. So they were like, let's just do more. But because of the box office, it was going to be called Transylvania. I mean, they kill off all of the monsters pretty much.
Yeah.
So I don't know
they
what
send
would
Frankenstein
be
off to
left.
kill Dracula. There's no more Wolfman.
What do? Nothing. We just follow that. We follow that Undertaker just measuring people up, top hat or whatever it's called.
He dies, so we can't even do that.
Yeah, true. He is dead. Yeah.
I was very excited to read in the IMDb that he plays Arthur Conan Doyle in Shanghai Nights, which is a real favorite of mine.
God, I haven't seen that in years. Fucking hell, that's a deep cut.
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah. Shanghai Nights. God, I didn't even remember Conan Doyle being in it. Sounds like that. That's such a long time ago.
I think that's one of those films that I will have had my family rent out from the video shop showing my age and probably just worn it out over the 3 days that we had it.
I will put it on the possible podcast list for us. Here's another thing I didn't quite like. The whole left-handed god shit.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I do. Probably the biggest criticism I have of this film is the complete cop out they do. In the terms that they allude to the idea that
he's long
Gabrielle
lived. He was
and Dracula were two sides of God at one point, but then they don't expand on it and they just have Van Helsing say some things are best left forgotten, and I'm like, no, you don't get to
we get all this horrible exposition earlier. Carl delivers all of this stuff, and he just goes, oh yeah, Dracula babies. But then when it actually comes to the bit you kind of need to explain, it's far too fucking vague. Now, like, I get it that he's long lived. He's supposed to be the left hand, and like they changed the name to Gabriel, so I don't know if that's implying that he's like the Archangel Gabriel. I think there was an opportunity here to do something more interesting. So they don't want to call him Abraham. I think Sommers had an issue with the name Abraham, but I thought, why not make him a different religious figure that maybe God is cursed? What if he was like Cain from Cain and Abel, the man who brought
that's interesting.
The man who brought evil into the world and committed the first murder and now has to atone for it throughout his lifetime by being the left hand of God? Or what if he was Judas and again he has to atone for what he did throughout time? What if he was Abraham? What if he was Abraham who was going to slay his son Isaac for the Lord? And maybe when God was like, again, I think that particular biblical story makes God look like an absolute dick because it makes him appear like he's
that one.
Yeah, that one particular. Well, I mean, of many, but that one particular one. Again, all respect to whatever your religious views are, but I think that story, that bit in Peep Show where he goes, "I want you to buy me a kebab." And he goes, okay, I'll go and buy you a kebab. Oh my God, I can't believe you're going to buy me a kebab. It makes God look like that kind of high school bully kind of, when I was in high school,
just do it,
just do it. Oh, I can't believe you're going to actually do that, lol. And yeah, exactly. And it makes him look like that. So what if maybe Abraham is about to do it, or maybe he actually does do it. Maybe he actually does kill Isaac, and God was like, "No, I shouldn't have done that. Now you're cursed." Or if he condemns God for trying even to make him kill his son, and then he's cursed to walk the earth and atone for what he's said and done his entire life. I think that would be far more interesting. Makes for a better parallel for the cursed being of Dracula, who is also cursed. And the parallels would be so much stronger. But instead they just go, left-handed God.
I mean, you say that, but I have seen Dracula 2000 where they tried to bring in the Judas element and it was not successful.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. I think there's a better way of doing this. I
agree with you. I think they could have made a better parallel. And actually, it probably wasn't the time for it because I do have in my notes somewhere the fact that the order itself, like it's obviously based in Rome, but just one throwaway line kind of ADR where it's like, what in Allah is wrong with you?
Yes, I was going to mention this. So
this is a multicultural order. So, yeah, I mean, it could have maybe been interesting having him be a figure from possibly another religion, like you said, like a kind of parallel, because there are obviously parallels between Christianity and, some ancient Egyptian
Yeah.
mythologies and stuff like that. So I think there
Lot,
could have been scope.
a lot of prophets of the Muslim faith are in. Jesus is one, and
Yeah.
various others. So again, you couldn't make Hugh Jackman Mohammed, because you'd be in some serious trouble. You'd be in some serious trouble there. But yeah, there could have been various different options you could have had. But yeah, I just thought it was why. I don't mind the mystery, and I don't mind the long-lived stuff. I think that's interesting, but again, it's kind of put in there and just thrown away. I think you wouldn't have lost anything if he was maybe just a man, and he did know Dracula. He did meet Dracula, and he did maybe kill him, and then still got the amnesia. I think you wouldn't. It doesn't gain you or lose anything here. It's just that, I know you.
Well, it's
How do you
another
know
one
me?
where you kind of think, but it almost doesn't then make sense, because it never.
Yeah.
We don't get an explanation as to how and why.
Yes.
Apart from the fact that he's, left-handed god or whatever, like, why is he immortal? How is, is this a...
But he can still, he can still be he can still get infected by the werewolf, so he's still human. He can still potentially die. He gets injured, so he's not like invulnerable or not that we know of. It's strange. It's just, again, it raises too many questions.
Yeah. No, I definitely do agree with that. There's elements of the script, and I think the script is probably where a lot of the issues come from, in that maybe there was interference in some aspects, but not enough in others, where, like you said, maybe they'd written themselves into too many corners, but they were like, we don't have time to rectify it or kind of write ourselves out of this. So it's just there
Full
you go.
steam ahead.
Yeah. And I think, to be fair, I think this film is a great lesson in the attitude that I take towards art, where even if you know that there are flaws in the thing that you're creating and presenting, you've just got to commit to it. And maybe that's why so many of the performances are so balls to the wall, and why they kind of went so ham on some of the effects and stuff, because they were just
ham and cheese on toast, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Like, look, we need to just commit to this and just, try and have a bit of fun. And I think, like, that is partly, I think that's part of the reason why I forgive it as much as I do, because I don't have time to think about the logistics of the character's backstory if I'm busy going, this is amazing, the costumes are all great, and it's very like, oh, look, something shiny, and it works for me because I like shiny things.
I agree. It does, like, it's over 2 hours, but it does keep your attention. It never feels like the moments where they do take a breather are very warranted and needed, and I'd struggle to find something to cut. I think all of the action sequences are great. The chase sequence, they're all good fun, and they work and they serve the story. But yeah, it's absolutely like balls to the wall. Quick, let's go. Edit. And yeah, and again, like you said, some people saw this as another kind of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, taking these literary characters and putting them together. Again, I actually, back in the day, I saw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I hadn't read the comic at that point, but I saw it on a kind of a very bad rip-off, dodgy, off the back of a truck copy. And I was like, this is, and again, so dark, I can't even tell what's going on. I was like, this is great. I took my mates to see it at the cinema, because I was like, I've had the dodgy copy. I should give the film some money if I've enjoyed it. So we went to the cinema, and they went, that was shit, Dan. And I was like, yes, it was. I do apologize. But the comic is good. So I'd give that a go. Some very, very disturbing things happen in that comic, but still pretty good.
Well, I watched something recently that talked about the changes that they made to the Invisible Man in the film, and you kind of think, copyright aside, I personally think they made the right decision there, because the original backstory, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because they don't call him the Invisible Man. They refer to him as an Invisible Man, I think, something like that. But again, there's stuff in there I like, and also, speaking of Richard Roxburgh, he's in it.
He's in it again,
Phantom.
yeah. I bet he really misses early 2000s camp kind of Baz Luhrmann properties and those adjacent. I mean, to be fair, like, obviously he's in Elvis. I felt criminally underused in Elvis. He plays Elvis's dad. It's
right, nice.
Most normal role I've ever seen him play.
Yeah. He is in Mission Impossible 2 as well. He plays the henchman. Yeah, he's Doug Ray Scott's henchman.
Oh my god!
You know the one. The one he takes the finger off. Yeah, that's him. That's him.
For some reason, because that's the only Mission Impossible film I've ever seen, so can't help but have a soft spot for it. I have
I
always,
like
in my head, remembered that as being Stellan Skarsgård.
No. It's
Right, cool.
bleach blonde, but that's him. Yeah, that's him. Because that's the first thing
I don't know where I got
saw him in.
Skarsgård from, but
Yeah,
right.
I saw him in that, and then I saw him in this, and then years later I saw him in Moulin Rouge, and other stuff, I'm sure. But yeah, that's it. That's him. Because I remember that. I always remember the cigar. He has the cigar snipper and takes his finger off, and I was like,
Yeah,
as a kid, I was
Prattle.
like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh. and quite, that's actually not unlike what they were going to do to Igor in this as well. But she says she's going to snip off something else. Of course, I don't want to see Igor's dick. I'll be honest. I don't want to see that.
I don't.
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that. But he is. It's Stephen Sommers' kind of muse. What's his name?
Hey, Benny.
Yeah,
I forget his
yeah,
name,
Benny.
but,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's
Also,
Kevin J.
Paul Thomas
O'Connor.
Anderson's muse as well.
Yes, yeah. Kevin J. O'Connor. He's in Deep Rising. He's also in The Mummy, and he's also in this. Yeah, great actor. Lots of, again, I love those kind of Weasley kind of henchmen.
Yeah, me too.
I'm always a big fan. If you can get me to hate you, then I'm all in. I'm like, you are doing your job, sir. When I fucking hate you and I want you to die. I've got a podcast with Andy that's coming out on Monday, and there's a character in that I wanted to die, but unfortunately I didn't get my wish. But yeah, exactly. But I told him, and he knew, and he was like, "I'm not going to tell you that he doesn't die." And then I was like, by the end, I was like, "Why didn't he fucking die?" I wish. But I do like as well the kind of. I know you're a big fan of the operatic. We talked about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You were the only person to send in a positive comment in defence of that film. And again, you talked about the operatic nature of that film. And I love the Frankenstein in this because every time he speaks, he's like, "No, why?"
Yeah, it's another one that is just absolutely hamming it up.
Yeah.
But I think it. I don't know. I just think it works. But I also think he's hamming it up. But he also does bring a gravitas to it.
Yeah, it's like this. It's strange because it's like those quiet moments with the monster. I think are really good. Like, I hope someone, you're going to become just like me, and I hope people, hunt you as passionately as you hunted people like me. I will say this as well. Like, the Vatican don't want Hyde killed because they feel they can separate Jekyll from the monster. So, and Jackman's like, "I would just want to fucking kill you. This is what I do. I kill monsters." But then he's like, "Yeah, I'm there when they turn back into, he's regretful and, he's, doing this for penance and everything." But then at the end, they're like, "No, kill Frankenstein."
It doesn't really make any sense why they
like-
would kind of draw the line there. Maybe, I suppose maybe the argument is, and I can't remember if they say this textually, but just the fact that, like, obviously in Frankenstein, I think they kind of explore the idea that, like, bringing something back from the dead is kind of the ultimate taboo
Sin,
against
yeah.
God. So maybe
Yeah.
that's where the line is drawn, in the way that, like,
True.
Hyde is an experiment gone wrong, and there's maybe chance that he can be redeemed, whereas they maybe just feel like,
I mean, I get it in terms of Jackman's arc, because he goes from a murderer to a hero, or a killer to a hero, and that's the point. He's like, there's no evil in this thing. Evil's left its mark on it, but it is not evil. And he's quoting the Bible, and he's like, "I just want to live," and all this. And it's great. It's great. Again, I think the interpretation of this character, it works for me. He's big, he's strong. I like I love the green electricity, the heart thing, and in his skull as well. I love that aesthetic works for me.
I love that he and Carl as well have a lovely little kind of burgeoning friendship as well. Especially because obviously I think, it's weird because I think it would have worked better if Carl was introduced as being a bit more like rigid to the kind of religious side of it, where he's kind of introduced as like,
I mean,
family prayer. Like
he does become that way towards the end. Like in the beginning, obviously he likes to swear and drink, and then there's that moment that probably hasn't aged too well, where he's like, "Oh, what can I do to thank you?" And he's like,
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, this is not that great," but again, it is what it is. But it's 2004. What can we say? But yeah, he starts off like quite loose with his morals, but as he experiences more and more evil and more kind of supernatural stuff, I think he's kind of clutching his pearls all that more, and that's why he's like, well, we've got to, I've got to kill you. You've got to be killed. He's like, I want to live. And again, I love it. It's so camp and silly, but I appreciate that version. I think I like. Again, those are the strengths of me. Is Frankenstein and the Dracula elements work for me, but the other elements just feel a little more kind of tacked on. There was talk about including the creature from the Black Lagoon in that scene.
Yes, we talked about this.
Yeah, and again, I think there's already too much kind of going on. Like they do cram a lot in this runtime. Again, over 2 hours, but I think they do cram in a lot. And I think a lot of it works, and I think a lot of it connects quite seamlessly. Again, especially the Dracula and Frankenstein stuff. But I think if you add that, that's a whole nother.
I think it just would have been overkill, and I think kind of too late in the game to be introducing another sort of classic monster, but not really doing anything with them.
Even like, again, you don't. I guess you need the hide thing to kind of introduce the character Van Helsing, where he's at. But even that might have seemed a bit more than you needed, but I get why they kept it in, and I think it still works, and still again works with that narrative. But it's just it's another small issue for me. But again, I think like you said, overall, it's so fast paced. It's so like let's get on to the next thing, onto the next thing, onto the next thing. I will say, speaking about how beautiful Kate Beckinsale is, she does have those horrible 2000s brows, those skinny.
They are
skinny
very thin.
brows. They are like a pencil thin mustache. But I will say when she puts on the kind of Puritan hat of Van Helsing, I think.
When Van Helsing's flirting with her like a guy at a party.
Yeah. Basically, like, oh
yeah. Hat, babe.
When he puts on the hat, I think she has probably never looked cuter ever in her life.
I
completely
agree.
I was just like,
I do actually quite like their dynamic. Like it's very sort of classic snarky, meet cute. But sure. It's I don't know. I think those parts are quite charming. Like I remember when I was younger, like I really thought the bit where she's kind of like, oh, I said she's like, oh, I said I owe you a drink. He's like, yeah, you did. And she's like, bars down there, help yourself.
Yes, love that.
I used to think like that's a good line, but I still do. Like, yeah, I think their relationship is quite charming. They clearly have good chemistry together. They're both equally useless, which I think helps.
Yes.
The only thing I don't like is even less so than the fact that he ultimately kills her in the end. But there's that bit where she stops him from killing her brother when he's a werewolf, and he kind of like pins her to the wall by the neck. And I'm like, oh, okay, just chill out for a sec.
Calm down.
Yeah. There's also
I can see why you've got wanted posters, Van Helsing.
Yeah, exactly. There's one shot in it that maybe it's just my interpretation of it, but I think it's unintentionally hilarious in the way that it's just after that bit actually where Anna's saying oh, I've never been to the sea, and I think it's meant to look like Van Helsing is kind of looking at her in a really pensive, like, wow, what an amazing thing that I've never considered that somebody might have never experienced, or kind of a pensive moment. But it honestly just looks like he goes, this bitch.
What the fuck are you talking about? I think it's meant to be like, oh, she's led this sheltered and horrible life, and she's never seen the, because she's like, oh, the Adriatic Sea, and like, yeah. And I think it's that she's just had this hard and life struggling fighting with vampires. All the family are dead and they're cursed to not go to the afterlife because of this, because of the Valerius's was that whole segment with Carl, we has to explain everything, and it's like, oh, we do this and we do that, and we
I have seen this film countless times, and I still think I would struggle to explain the history and what it means for the plot.
I do like that they reference the poem from The Wolfman, where he's like, even in a full moon, a good man. I thought that was a nice little touch again from that original film.
I do love the CGI paintings as well, like that looks straight out of like a Telltale game.
It looks very much like young Sherlock Holmes with that stained glass window night, which we did on the podcast, me and Max, a while back. So yeah, and I will say there's a great moment where they're kind of like, we know we're about to give you a lot of exposition, but we are going to cut like a little bit. And David Wenham goes, as you might have known, your father, Father Dracula, so your great 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 grandfather was the father of Dracula. And she goes, everybody knows that. And I was like, oh, like I needed something like that before we get into. But then we still get a fuck ton of exposition about the fucking history. But I was like, at least they know that they're about to give a fuck ton of exposition, and then again, I think that's the thing with exposition is you're telling characters things they already know to tell the audience what we need to know. And I'm glad that she just went, I know that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
That.
I think this film is self-aware that it's not, bulletproof kind of
Yeah, sure.
watertight narrative. I think I'm sure they knew that they were like, people are going to rip this apart. So like the best you can do is just have a sense of humor about it. Also, just as a quick note, one of my good friends refers to David Wenham's character as Medieval Q, and I just think that's great.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Well, I read on IMDb that's what that scene is for. I quite enjoyed the Blade 2 grenade, as I call it, which they use at the Vampire Masquerade Ball. He's like, I don't know what it's for. I know what it does, but I don't know what it's for. And then they just do it, and then again Blade 2 had been out for a couple of years by now, so they definitely were like, we're going to steal some of that Guillermo del Toro goodness and put it in our. Put it in our film.
Still from the best.
Absolutely, I fucking love Blade 2. First DVD I ever bought was Blade 2. Full of features. Do you want to know something absolutely disgusting about Blade 2? So, Blade 2, there's a scene right at the end where he hunts down a vampire from the beginning that he kills, and he goes to like a little a peep show. He opens the thing, he gets like razor blades out and stuff, and I was like, fucking hell, all right. You're a bit hardcore with your peep shows. And then Blade's the guy behind the mirror, it's not a woman. And he's like, you didn't think I forgot about you, and then stabs him through the mirror. That's how the film ends. Spoilers. When they went to film that, they went to film it at a real peep show, and they filmed it, and they didn't realize there was jizz on the window, so they had to film it again. They had to wipe it down, and I think if I remember on the DVD, you can see it with the jizz on it. If you want to watch the deleted.
Oh, it's grim.
Now that is some gross trivia that I know that I've kept in my brain for all these years.
Wonderful.
Just in time, 20 plus years later, just in time for this.
Maybe that's why Wesley didn't want to leave his trailer during Blade 3.
It was like, I've got to do some tax evasion. I'll be my trailer. I'm going to smoke weed and do that. But there you go.
Oh, Wesley. To be fair, I mean, just quickly, because
go on.
I just do not care for Blade 3, and I will put it on record that I think that version of Dracula is the worst. My least favorite Dracula. I think
most people would agree with you. I think that's
I think because I've always listened to people talk about how terrible and cringe Richard Roxburgh's Dracula is, and I'm like, come on. Fair enough if it's not your taste, but come on, there are worse things out there.
This is what I was saying as well. Like, I think I've seen far worse versions of Dracula and vampires in the stuff I've watched. If you think this is the worst interpretation, again, you've not plumbed the depths that I have of shitty films and shitty vampire films. By God, I could find you some, and you would be like, oh, you know what? Van Helsing's kind of all right in comparison. Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything? Because we are coming to an end very shortly. Is there anything else or you want to say about it, or is there what's your final word on this to defend it? If people haven't seen it, why should they watch it, or why should they give it a second chance?
I think just kind of for the reasons we've said, you do have to go in with a bit of an open mind, and absolutely don't expect a piece of cinema trademark. But I just think it's really fun. It's really creative. There's a level of commitment from everybody that I really appreciate. I think kind of like we were saying in the way that we like to watch actors have fun. I feel like you can tell that this is a bit of a labour of love. I mean, I remember watching the DVD extras like way back in the day, and you just got this sense that they were all just really enjoying themselves. I think like David Wenham and Hugh Jackman were just like, hey, we're just a couple of Antipodeans here on set. I just think there's a place for films that are just about having a good time and being a bit silly, and I'm sure they probably wanted to make a film that was maybe more than just something that's good fun. Like, I think there probably is buried in there. I think there's bits in the script where I feel like they probably wanted to have something that really like delved into like, the duality of man and monster and, like being redeemed and all that stuff. And where they clearly just didn't have the time or kind of energy for that. But I think what we got is great and just really entertaining and fun. And yeah, I just think, especially just with the state of our current world, I think it's totally fine for people. I'm glad that people are now kind of coming around to like, let's just lighten up a bit and like not take everything so seriously. It's great. I love it.
It's all right. It's all right to have fun. I think you can have, because like this is a comic book movie. Like you could easily read this as a comic book movie even at that time. I still have fun with it. I probably don't think it's 10 out of 10 like it is as a child, but I think it's solid. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's got good versions of these characters or interesting takes. I think you're right. It does have pathos there. I think the Frankenstein monster, every time he has a moment, I'm like, oh fucking hell, I do feel for you. This giant, big, grey, green-brained thing. There's something there. Even Dracula, even though he kind of flitters from like, and then he's like laughing. I have no joy, no sorrow, I'm hollow. And again, that's very like. Yes, all of that. That's
love
fucking
it.
love that bit. Yeah, just perfect. Just some
time.
great fun camp. Yeah, just great camp. There is pathos in some of these characters. Again, they don't get to plumb the depths of that, but there's enough there where I'm like, oh yeah, this does feel a little bit gothic. It does feel a little bit like there's enough references here that's not just like slamming action figures together. It feels like there's a story and a narrative that works, and that these characters need to be on screen and work on screen together. Again, not all of the characters work or feel fully fleshed out. But I think on the whole, like for me, it's probably a solid 8 out of 10. I think there's still a lot of fun to be had. I do think Hugh Jackman's accent does vary from American to English quite frequently. I was like, where are we? Where are we, Gabriel? Where are you from? Where are you from, Van Helsing? When does he get the name Van Helsing? What name did he have before that? I was always like curious about as well. Like, how did we get to that point? But no, don't think about it. Don't think.
Yeah, just don't think about it.
Don't think about it. I did want to mention one last thing as well. The ball, the banquet, the Masquerade Ball takes place on All Hallows Eve. So this could have been a Shockphobia Fest podcast.
Yeah.
So we could have had it. We could have had it in October. We're having it right now. Much
multi-use Van Helsing.
multi-use. But yeah, I'll stick that on the list on Letterboxd if you want to have a look at those. All the Shockphobia Fest potentials and ones we've already covered. You can go on there and have a look. So I think that's entry 500, I believe, on that list. I spend a lot of time compiling lists for films I'll never watch.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
So yeah, so go and check that out if you want some things set on Halloween. Go and check those out. I'm currently I think I might record later another one for this year for Halloween, but we'll see what happens with that. But Sarah, we have some listener comments before we go out. So let's hear. So Derek, yesterday, just in time, sent me an email again, very professional, my boss, sending in his opinions on this film. He was not a fan of Mary Shelley, but is he a fan of Van Helsing? I've not yet read this, so I don't know what he said. So let's find out together. Hi, Dan. Here are my comments. Count Dracula is a dirty old perv with a Jamiroquai hairstyle.
Superb.
Yeah, can't really agree with that. Well, can't really disagree with that, rather. The Ewok-style gas mask wearing mini-vampires were great. I sent you a message and I said, why do they look like Mr. Freeze's goons?
Yes.
And then I realised that Valerius traps Dracula in his own castle, which is a frozen empire. So it's a frozen fortress, which is why they wear those kind of, polar outfits, let's say. Those are kind of weird creatures. One of those gets yeeted out of a window, which was great. Good that the Frankenstein was depicted with a flat top head, much more historically accurate than that Kenneth Branagh nonsense, although sorely lacking in the amniotic fluid department.
You can't have everything, I guess.
We can't. We need more amniotic fluid.
we need to pay for the high wire so Dracula can climb the walls.
arguably, is there not amniotic fluid in those egg sacs? Could say it was
Yes.
in there. Because again, they were very shiny, they were covered in gunk. So you could say that was amniotic fluid if you want. And he says the worst line is, "We Transylvanians always look on the bright side of death." I actually have a worse line, I think, which is, "You can't go until I say you can go, and I'll say you can go when you're dead." I think that's the worst line in the film for me. Do you have a worse line, Sarah?
Do I have a worst line? Oh, good question. I'll have a think about that.
You have
If
a think.
yeah.
We've got a few comments yet. We've got a
Yeah.
few comments. So Derek says his best line is, "If you're going to kill someone, then don't just stand there talking about it." James Bond villains could learn a lot from this. Talking of which, isn't Carl the Friar a Q ripoff? Yes, he is.
Also, fun fact, when I did my standard exam to get my standard qualification in stage combat, me and my friend Elka did a kind of bastardized version of all of Alira and Kate Beckinsale, Anna's lines as our kind of combat scene.
Nice.
Because
Very,
of
very
course
nice.
we did.
So on the basis that the film was very, very tongue-in-cheek, I quite enjoyed it. So a better review than Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from Derek. Paul Meller, so this is on Threads at the Paul Meller. He says, "I quite enjoyed this in the cinema. Not sure I've watched it since, but I thought it was just a bit of fun."
Yeah.
Can't disagree with that. Jack Roberts says, "You can say it was Underworld, but with somehow more edgy costumes, but otherwise had a superior werewolf design and a Dracula that was just, in my humble opinion, the epitome of sex on legs."
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, the costumes are great. Actually, I feel like we kind of touched on Van Helsing's look with his, the Puritan hat and the jacket and everything. I do quite like Dracula's Welcome to the Black Parade jacket as well.
Absolutely, yeah. That kind of tunic does scream very kind of emo goth vibes. I guess his character screams a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, yeah, absolutely. No, I can see that. So John Hammond says, "Ludicrous, dreadful CGI, and as camp as feck. But my word, this is such a fun movie. The black and white opening is pretty stunning. We have Frankenstein's monster werewolves, long-haired Hugh Jackman, and the lovely Kate Beckinsale. Yeah, lots to enjoy. Prefer this to the Sommers Mummy."
Wow, interesting. That feels like a hot take.
Fair enough.
I like, obviously, yeah, I love the first two Mummy films, especially. Yeah, like, is it better? I think I probably would say the Mummy is better, but I said, I do love them both. But yeah, I mean, fair. Totally
Arguably,
fair.
maybe a bit more grounded, maybe, as a Mummy film can be. And yeah, again, we get to spend more time with the characters and less time with the monsters, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think also part of it is, I think Evelyn is a better, well-rounded character is a more well-rounded
100%.
character than Anna is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that probably edges it out for me personally, but yeah.
True.
I'd say they're on
True.
fairly equal level, is my argument.
Yeah. I haven't seen it for a very long time, I'll be honest. Again, I've seen The Mummy Returns countless times, but I can't remember the last time I watched The Mummy or sat down to watch that. But I remember really enjoying it quite fondly. And again, we've had this renaissance, so maybe I should revisit it. Next comment is from Mike Burton. "I have fond memories of Van Helsing. I found their interpretations of the supernatural beings work quite well. The starting scene, although the CGI is a bit sloppy, gives a great introduction to the movie's vibe, and the version of Hyde is cool. I remember the vampire makeup looking ace, but maybe that was just young Mike fancying one of the female vampires. It's all right, Mike. I am an old Dan, and I fancy all of the female vampires."
Yes, only one of them.
No,
Have you seen
yeah, I
them?
was like, and Kate Beckinsale,
Yeah.
and again, verging onto my bisexual side, I definitely, even though I don't dabble, I can definitely see the reasons why I would dabble with Richard
Yes.
Roxburgh and also Van Helsing. But yes, and then he says, I haven't seen it in a long time, though. Can't remember the specifics regarding dialogue or narrative. I just remember it looking cool and being the right level of action that didn't take itself too seriously. Jackman is also a plus, especially in his first X-Men trilogy heyday. Megan has fond memories too, but we're almost too scared to rewatch it in case it's crap. Looking forward to hearing all of the thoughts on this one. So I think me and Sarah would happily say go and revisit it. I think it sounds like you already remember it quite well, Mike. So just go in with that kind of same kind of headspace, and I think you'd enjoy it. I was going to say, like, the scenes with Dracula and Gabriel Van Helsing are very reminiscent of X-Men 2 with Wolverine and Stryker, I think. Like, I know your secrets, I know who you are.
How do you know
I
me?
know,
What is this strange history?
Yeah, we used to work together. We used to be friends, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of like the devil teasing Jesus in the desert. I'm so biblical this week. I'm so biblical. Max Burns says it's an everything but the kitchen sink kind of film. So again, he's saying that they throw everything in there and kind of see what sticks. And yeah, it does have that vibe. It does. And again, not all of it sticks, but I think for the most part, it does stick.
Almost like a kind of classic, like older level of media thing where you see it a lot in like Mel Brooks films or like even old Simpsons, where it's just like you throw everything at the wall, and even if something doesn't quite land, you don't even have time to register that it hasn't landed because you're already looking at the next thing. There's merits in that.
I agree. It's that fast-paced, edited, and I can see again. And speaking of Mel Brooks, the Frankenstein in this, the actor, he played Frankenstein another 2 times. One in a stage version of Young Frankenstein, and then also in the Frankenstein musical as well.
Oh, I love that.
Which again kind of explains the operatic voice.
Yes.
So yeah, I imagine he smashed it in both of those interpretations. I also read that he did opera singing on set to entertain the children between the takes, which was kind of a sweet little thing. Again, very.
That's cute.
I don't think he probably did much acting. I think it was just this is just me.
This is just how I speak.
Here we go. Angry Andy. Oh, how will he fall on this? Total utter arse. Saved only by a campy but committed performance by Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale wearing tight clothing.
I mean, it is campy. It is committed. The clothes are tight.
I don't know if it's. I wouldn't say it's total utter arse. I think there's again fun to be had.
Yeah,
again, Andy is known
absolutely.
for his strong opinions on various things. And then Blake Biles, he says he speaks for all of us, so he must agree with Andy's opinions on that. And then Math says, I remember this. Well, it was so much better than the year before's League of Gentlemen. Kate Beckinsale sold it to us back then. It wasn't bad. And the lead up to that big CGI fight at the end, with the occasional shot of Hugh Jackman shirtless. Is it a 10 out of 10 even back then? It is a struggle, but it's a worthy 7 out of 10. So he enjoyed it as well. But yes, another reference to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And again, the CGI. We talked about the CGI and how it...
Yeah,
okay, Tonya
I
Todd.
made a note saying that I think there's a shot of the brides kind of in flight at the very beginning, and it kind of looks more on the Birdemic side of things.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
100%. I was like,
time.
Different time, yeah. So yeah, and again, we're still learning, and again, I think it would still be criticised and critiqued today, even if it came out today, even with the CGI of today. I think you'd still have those moments. It is very CGI heavy, but again, it's CGI heavy, but there is a lot of practical effects as well, I think, which I appreciate. Again, and the aesthetic and the production design is superb. You do feel like you're in another world, you're in another, an ancient Transylvania and stuff. And yeah, just all of that stuff is great. Tonya Todd, how do you think she's going to fall on this one? It was pretty bad. One of the worst Dracula renditions ever, but Kate Beckinsale kept the film bearable. A lot of love for Kate Beckinsale.
A lot of love for Kate Beckinsale, as there should be.
Again, Tonya, I don't think you've maybe seen the same level of quality of Dracula interpretation
Has nobody else seen Dracula 2000?
We need to show everyone Dracula 2000.
It was utter arse.
Yeah, utter arse, as Andy would say. I'm sure Andy would agree with you. That one is utter arse. But yes, so that's all of our comments. That is our podcast for today. Thank you again, Sarah, for joining me and defending this. I think you've done a very good job of defending this.
Well, thank you.
And again,
I certainly tried to.
and people seem to agree for the most part that it is fun camp silliness, and if you're there and want to embrace it, you can, and you can have a lot of fun if you do so. Again, I can understand why people wouldn't gel with it to a degree if they're not up for that kind of vibe.
Like we said, there are issues. There are definite
Sure.
things where you can pointedly be like, this, does let it down. But I think there's a lot to love about it as well.
100%. Right. Well, thank you, everybody. But Sarah, you are on the social medias and very active on them. Where can people find you and look at what amazing and interesting stuff you're up to?
So I'm on Instagram and Threads, and I am now on Blue Sky. Actually, I can't remember.
Blue Sky,
I'm usually Sarah Coyne.
I'll link it. I'll link it. But yes, you're still a jobbing actor and still doing so many things. Are you going into that? Are you going to that Viking play this week? Are you going to that?
I am. Yes. Yes. We're going to. Yeah, going to go see that. Yeah. So I worked with.
I'll be there too.
Brilliant. I'll see you there. So I know.
Absolutely.
Charlie and Ollie that wrote it and are performing in it.
Nice.
Worked with them last year. They're great guys. They're really sound. And I'm really excited to see what they've come up with. Got a couple of acting things in the pipeline. So if you do follow me on Insta, stay tuned.
Yes, a lot of good stuff, a lot of interesting and exciting things. But thank you again. This has been great. I think I might release this a bit early because I've been ill and my podcasting pipeline has been delayed a little bit. So I might just drop this a little bit early for all the people that have been waiting for content. And why not? Let's have some fun.
Kate Beckinsale.
Give them what they want, and they want Van Helsing. They want Van Helsing, I think. And also if you are a patron like Sarah is, you can enjoy some of the Universal style monster stuff we've been looking at. We've been looking at things like Sherlock Holmes versus the Invisible Man and Dracula, and I've just finished or just dropped the Frankenstein Dracula War, which is also quite good. So and it is very much in line with something like this. And I think if you have the fun campy battles in this, I think you'd enjoy that comic as well, while still having a little gothic horror in there and violence and blood and stuff, all this good stuff. But yeah, I'd check that one out as well. An absolute 90s classic as well. And I am a 90s bitch, so there we go. So speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank all of the people that donate. So that is Tony Farina, I'm Jax Musing, Simon Cotton, Paul Mellon, Mike Burton, Angry Andy, Tonya Todd, Math, Scott Hodgson, Rhea Carrigan, and of course, Sarah Coyne. Thank you again for your continuing donations. It is very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my icy fortress and rest. And Sarah's got a very busy day ahead of her, so I'll let her go. I'll let her fly off with her big vampire wings.
My three wives.
And your three wives. I'm very jealous. I'll just go and rest in my coffin and rest again. Go back to my icy prison. But yeah, thank you again. This has been great. I've really enjoyed this, and I think all of the Prattalion will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, thank you very much for having me again.
My pleasure. All right, take care, guys, and as always, prepare for Prattle.